My mantra is grief can be complicated, but access to support should never be. All I did was bring all the bereavement services across the UK together so that anyone, anywhere, under any circumstance, knew that they were going to be supported. I did not want anybody walking out of a hospital or having the police knock on the door with a sudden death without knowing that there is someone there from day one. I've stood on my soapbox and I've shouted as loud as I possibly can to raise awareness and to bang the drum really for the bereaved. We need to get people together because it can be incredibly isolated. It doesn't matter what weather hits you, if it's a storm, if it's the sunshine, if it's rain, we're here for you under our umbrella.
Welcome to the podcast, Death, a Changing Industry. Today with the great pleasure to welcome the CEO of the Good Grief Trust, Linda Magistris. Linda, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Well, thank you for asking me.
It's great to finally sit down with you and to talk on camera about the work that you do and the organisation does. Firstly then, before we go into the depths of what actually it does, can we go back to why you set this up in the first place, please?
Yeah, so 10 years ago, my partner Graham, who I've been with for 8 years, he died of cancer, a soft tissue sarcoma, which was quite a rare cancer, and it was missed, sadly, for about a year. So when they diagnosed it, he died 5.5 months later. So that was really tough.
Yeah.
And I'd lost my dad actually 25 years ago this year. And that was bad enough. But I had 2 young children. My dad was everything to me, my rock. But I seemed to sort of just get on with life really. And maybe I was wired to expect my dad to die, I think. But when Graham died, it was a completely different thing. I just literally thought I was going completely crazy. I used to stride across Wimbledon Common where we lived and scream to the ceiling, "Where are you?" To the sky, because it was like he was here, like you are,
Yeah.
and then suddenly he's not. And that just sent me a bit crazy, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I went to see the GP and I said, I need some help.
Yeah.
It was about 6 months after Graham died. I just ploughed myself into work before that, and I just carried on. And then when I just sort of sat on the sofa one day and I thought, I can't even get up here. This is crazy. I just need some help. So I went to see him and he gave me a leaflet for a big national charity, a bereavement charity, but they didn't have anything for probably about 6 to 8 months at that time, a waiting list, and I couldn't wait 6 to 8 hours, let alone, all that time. So I said, what else have you got? And he said, well, I haven't. So I phoned up and I tried to see if I can get some counselling, but there were so many, sort of hoops to come through. So I had a girlfriend who lived very nearby, and so I just lied and I gave her address because I heard that they had some counselling in her area in Kensington. Yeah. And I went off and I sat like this, and there was a box of tissues and there was a clock, and I just cried my way through it. And she was very nice, but I just didn't find anything that I found as though I could sort of get some hope going forward. So I went back to my GP and I said, that's no good, what else? And he said, well, I haven't really got anything else except sleeping tablets or antidepressants. And I said, well, I'm not one to even take a headache pill, so that's not going to work for me. So what else can I do? And he had nothing else. So I walked out of there and I just thought, this is mad, because I really need some help. So I went back to the big hospitals where Graham was treated in London, and I went to the Macmillan Suite, and they had every single cancer support group leaflet about, different sort of support services they could offer. And I said, what do you do for bereavement? And they said, well, actually, we don't have any bereavement support groups, but maybe if you'd like to start one, that would be great. And I just thought, oh, hang on, this is crazy. There are so many people, who must need this help. And I went again back to another hospital where he was treated, and they had nothing either. So I went online, I just Googled, and I put in widowed, young, grief, and a brilliant charity called Way, Widowed and Young popped up. Yeah. And that was it. That was sort of my turning point, because I became London coordinator for them. We went bowling and we had coffee and dinner and everything, and I met other people who've been through it, and they helped me to know that actually you can survive and you can thrive. Yeah, so I just thought, this is mad. We must be able to find other places like this charity. And they weren't being brought together, and that's what sort of my light bulb moment, really.
No, well, as an ambassador for the Good Grief Trusts, I feel very aligned to what you do. I spotted the gaps, even recently, and it's just so important. And I think, again, the fact that there was nothing there for you, it was so hard to even find way. So the charity itself, then, what you do, what is the mission? What is the focus around what you do?
Well, it's to make sure that nobody grieves alone. You know, my mantra is grief can be complicated, but access to support should never be. And that's the thing, because there is so much disparity, and there's a postcode lottery, and it depends where you live and who's dealing with the death. And that could be a hospital, it could be the police, it could be a hospice. I wanted everybody to have the same standard of care across the UK. I wanted all those services very quickly and very easily, actually. It's not rocket science. All I did was bring all the bereavement services across the UK together so that anyone, anywhere, under any circumstance, knew that they were going to be supported. And that was my absolute top line. I did not want anybody walking out of a hospital or having the police knock on the door with a sudden death without knowing that there is someone there from day one. And that is also really, really important, because back then, 10 years ago, there was this sort of understanding that maybe, you know, people who are grieving need to be left alone, leave them alone, you know, they're sad, we can't interfere, you know, we might say the wrong thing. And we know now that is completely wrong. We need to let those people who are grieving know from day one that actually there is what we call help and hope in one place. And then later on, they can access that support when they need it.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. And also you talk about having the charities under one umbrella as well, which again is part of the focus and the badge as well.
Yeah.
Could you go into that?
Yes,
as well?
exactly. It's all to do with feeling sheltered and bringing all those services under one umbrella. And I wanted the little orange umbrella to be an iconic symbol of help and hope in one place. And we've got all those charities, support services, helplines, retreats, yoga sessions, you know, whatever it is that's right for you is right for you. But as we know, grief changes on an hourly, weekly, monthly basis. So I wanted choice under that one umbrella, but everything very simply found very quickly when you need it.
Yeah, and like you say, grief is so unique to every individual.
Yeah.
It can't be a one size fits all. And like you mentioned about how I think historically people have said, oh, you need to wait X amount of months, and it's just not correct. We're all unique, we all grieve in our own way. You mentioned as well about other service professionals. So what other professionals do you work with and do you bring under that umbrella?
Well, very closely with the NHS. So early days, we created not only this database, this umbrella organisation where everything came together, because crazily, there was nothing in the UK. We didn't have a central database. We didn't have one resource that the GPs, the health professionals, the police could access. So we work very closely with the NHS. As I say, we have a database which is updated and constantly monitored, so it's always up to date, and that's really, really important. But we also have a resource, a good grief card, a condolence card, which I created back then, really, 8 years ago. So that is in most hospital trusts now, NHS trusts, so we work very closely with bereavement teams, with end-of-life teams, with palliative care teams. We also work with hospices to make sure that they also have those resources at end of life. Very closely this year, we've started working, well last year actually now, with the Metropolitan Police. And now with the family liaison officers, so that is with road traffic accidents, with murder, with manslaughter, with suicide. They are also using the Good Grief card and signposting back down to the database. So it's really across the whole sector. And obviously, like yourself, we're working very closely with the funeral sector to make sure that everybody is working and gives a consistent standard of care.
Yeah, just bringing it all together in one place, back to that message.
Yeah.
And also, the Good Grief Trust hosts the annual National Grief Awareness Week.
Yes.
So can you explain about that week? When does it take place and what happens?
Yeah, so I didn't want us just to be a database or a resource. I wanted us to be a community. I wanted us to be a community that cared, and that's really, really important. So back in, 2017, we co-founded the first all-party parliamentary group on bereavement support working with government, and that was really pivotal because there was nothing really in the UK working with government that we brought the services, we brought MPs and peers together and charities to make sure that we raised awareness of all those issues around grief and loss. So I then realised actually we didn't have an awareness day or awareness week or a month that actually talked about grief and loss and raised awareness of the impact of losing somebody. We had Hug a Tree Day, Stroke a Dog Day, but the really, really important thing was taboo, and still is sadly in many, sort of areas. But I thought by bringing us together at Christmas, which obviously is incredibly difficult in those really dark months of December, January and February, where we know a lot of bereavement issues are really highlighted. So I wanted something that we could all celebrate the lives of those people who have died, but primarily to support the people who are grieving. Yeah. So back in 2019, we launched our first National Grief Awareness Week, and this year, 2025, we're now going to be going into our 7th year. So it always runs between the 2nd and the 8th of December. It's at those very early days before Christmas, so that before the parties start and everything, to let people know that actually there is a toolkit that we can find what we call, as we say, help and hope. And also to raise awareness of what to say, from friends and families' points of view, how to support people through that really sort of festive period. So it's a time of year to come together and just really open our conversations around grief and loss and bust up that taboo, really.
Well done, Linda. You're pioneering what you're doing. Also as well, we talked about your experience of loss, for the loss of Graham, and how grief is always so unique and the feelings associated to that. Why do you think in society we still struggle to talk about loss? And you mentioned about giving that toolkit and about what communication can be used. Can you give any examples of communication that can be helpful when someone has died? Absolutely.
I mean, it's so difficult. I think as a human being, to face death is really scary, isn't it? It's something that none of us really want to do, ever. It's hidden. We don't really want to talk about it. It's not normalised, because all those feelings that we get when we're grieving are completely normal, but we don't really know that until we experience it. So we do need to talk about it in advance so that we know once we start experiencing all those incredible sort of emotions, and it's like a ball of wool and it's messy and it's just all over the place, it's like a roller coaster. By raising awareness of those really difficult emotions, then hopefully friends and family and those people trying to support the grieving community will know how to address it, really, and how best to support people. But yeah, it's a natural thing, really. Why would we want to talk about death? Because it's something that we want to be able to put aside and we don't really want to have to face. But by facing it and realising, actually, if you do support the people who are bereaved, that's sadly probably going to be all of us in our life. We're all going to be experiencing a bereavement. It's not, something that is exclusive to any sector of the community. So by facing it, and one of our lovely ambassadors, Greg Wise, says, we've got to be grown up about it. We're all in childish denial, he says, it's nonsense. We just need to just go, do you know what? It's going to happen. So why don't we just face it? And then actually perhaps we can live our life in a really productive way, in a really kind and empathetic way, and helping other people in sort of with compassion, which is hopefully where we all want to be in society anyway.
And more present in the moment, exactly. More appreciative, more grateful as well.
Yeah,
so,
and that has to be a good thing, surely.
Totally.
Yeah.
Again, with what you do, have you seen many experiences and examples of how it's really helped somebody change their life in the support in which you offer people?
Yes, we've helped, I don't know how many people. The cards themselves, we donated 250,000, so that's 250,000 people. But that was back then, we've sent out hundreds and hundreds of thousands of cards, and we've hopefully helped many, many people. Not only that one person who's had the bereavement, but their friends, their family, their network, their work colleagues. And the feedback that we get is just so humbling, really, because just that one person, by knowing that on day one, that there are other people who understand, there are other people maybe who have lost a child, a baby, a sibling, a friend, a partner, a grandparent, and they've felt very similar emotions and they've got through it, or they're getting through it, can be someone's lifeline. And that's what they've said to us. They've said that by coming to our cafes initially, we ran cafes during COVID and pre-COVID, and they went online and virtual, by just even sitting, having a cup of coffee with somebody else who's been through it. they can walk out and they feel much lighter. You know, the burden of grief is so deep and so heavy. When you feel as though actually you're not the only one who's going through those incredibly damaging and really catastrophic feelings, you can then go out and maybe work. You maybe then can go and take the children to school, or, you know, go and take the dog for a walk, and without having sort of that real isolation and loneliness that comes with grief. You know that actually there is a community around you, and it's going to be difficult. Of course it will be, but you will be able to find, you know, your way forward.
Hey guys, thank you for watching the video so far. I hope you're really enjoying it. Please click the thumbs up on the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, a huge thank you to our sponsors. Their details are found in the video description just below. Thank you so much. An example of local level to Bridge North, where I'm based, a gentleman called Mark Irvine, who I think you'll know.
Yes,
He's a huge advocate for the work that you do, and I know the Good Grief Trust helped him a lot after the loss of his wife, Donna. And he has a bench now with a plaque on near his home. And the plaques I've just mentioned there as well, could you explain more about those, please?
Yeah, so they are Help and Hope plaques. So we launched in 2023 in summer at the Royal Windsor Flower Show alongside the Duchess of Edinburgh, who was incredibly supportive of the campaign. We launched the Sit With Hope campaign, and that's really came from one of our lovely patrons, who is Dame Penelope Wilton, who stars in Afterlife, and I'm sure many people know Afterlife with Ricky Gervais, and it's a really powerful piece because it hits hard at those really difficult emotions and conversations that we have. So Penelope played a character called Anne, and she used to sit in a cemetery on a bench with Ricky Gervais's character Tony, and they'd lost their husband and their wife, and they were chatting in the cemetery, you know, to the gravestones, and they'd laugh and they'd joke and they'd cry. And I thought, gosh, if we had people sitting on a bench anywhere, in a cemetery, down by the beach, you know, at a bus stop, and you had some way of signposting people immediately, and they knew that they could find, as I say, Help and Hope in one place, under our umbrella, maybe that would really help people if they didn't even know about us, or if they'd gone to a hospital that wasn't using our resources, or they were walking, you know, up in the Highlands of Scotland somewhere and they had never heard of grief support or bereavement support. So we created these plaques. So they've got a QR code on the end. It says the Good Grief Trust on it. And we've now sent over 800, 900 plaques across the UK. We've got 2 out in the House of Commons on the terrace, supported by the Speaker. We've got beautiful benches, like you said, with Mark, who sadly lost his wife, and he's got them in school playgrounds. We've got them in hospice gardens. Many hospitals now are taking them and they're putting them on the benches in their car parks and in their beautiful gardens down by the lakes. And they are just a very, very simple way of signposting people. When they're out in the community, they just scan that QR code and immediately the website comes up. And it's also a lovely way for children as well, maybe in schools, so they can sit on the benches in the playgrounds and they can open up that conversation with teachers and the community. Yeah, connect to it better as well. Yeah. So you've campaigned now for better bereavement support at national level in different avenues around bereavement and grief, and some fantastic initiatives that you've done. What changes in an ideal world would you like to see happen around grief and bereavement if you could just make it happen straight away? What would you? Well, if I could wave a magic wand, I think it would be that we'd all understand it better, number one, that we would all get how profound and how damaging and how complicated grief is and how long it can last. You know, all the myths around the fact that, you know, after the first year you should be able to go back to work, you should be able to, you know, forget about it and move on. That awful saying, move on, you know, we move forward. So it's really public awareness, I think, would be the big thing, and then maybe we'd be more empathetic, we'd be more calm, we'd be more kind, and we'd have more gentle conversations with people out in the community. That would be amazing. And then obviously the resources. You know, I'd absolutely love every person in the UK to be given a Good Grief card. We've got 650,000 people plus who die in the UK. So if every single person knew from day one that they were supported, that they could find help under our umbrella, that would be absolutely, well, it would be the best thing that we could possibly have achieved. Regarding, you mentioned workplaces as well.
Do you think that government or with the campaigns that we can do more, put more awareness into workplaces throughout the UK about grief and bereavement as well? That area is often forgotten.
It is, absolutely. We're working very closely with HR departments to make sure that their line managers and employees are very aware, first of all, of the Good Grief Trust, so that they know where to signpost their employees and anyone in their work place. Because, as you say, there's a lot of misconceptions and there's a lot of very rigid policies in place, and we can definitely make those more flexible. And for those people who are experiencing bereavement in the workplace, often they leave, because they're not understood. They are misunderstood. We've had many people who have come to us in the cafes, maybe teachers or even nurses, and professionals who haven't been supported because the headmaster, their line manager, whoever it is, hasn't understood and said, well, you're going to have to come back, I'm terribly sorry, it's really sad, but, we need you in the workplace. And the anniversaries, for example, are not even accepted or recognised, that maybe there would be a trigger along the way, maybe there's a birthday, there's obviously the death anniversary coming up, but even in between them, when people need time out and they need space, employees really need to understand that. So we're working really closely to offer the Good Grief Trust card, the resources, but also to work on a really brilliant sort of template, really, for employees.
And a lot of the work that you do is based around sort of community spaces.
Yes.
We've spoken before about doing like crematorium spaces as well for meetings. Do you have any concerns about the rise of like digital communities? Is that a problem, do you think? Or do you think actually it can just assist and contribute to the work you're already doing? What's your views on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I've always said that we're a really connective community, and it's really important to have that online. Not everybody can get to a face-to-face meeting or a group. It's very important to be able to offer choice. And so those people maybe who are at home, who can't physically even get somewhere, or emotionally, it's exhausting when you're grieving, to even get on a bus or to drive somewhere it's really can be debilitating. So I think it's really important for people to know that they can access digitally as well support. And our community is just huge. I mean, across social media, X, Instagram, Facebook, we have 180,000 followers plus. That's all organic. People come to us because they know that they can connect with other people, but also professionals can find the help and support and the access to lots of different support services through us digitally as well. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. Having the blend of choice.
Yeah, I mean, you can't take away the importance of face-to-face support, but when you have that choice and you can say, well, all right, well, today I fancy having a virtual cafe, or I just fancy talking to somebody on a grief chat, or I need maybe some counselling, but I can't physically go somewhere and I don't really feel as though I need to do that today. We need to offer choice.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. So you mentioned the followers online you've got now and the support networks you've built and put in place. So the Good Grief Trust has grown in a huge way. The question I have for you is, what is next for the trust?
Well, more of this. Let's say that. I mean, because I will not rest until, as I say, the card is in every single sector across the UK. So that's the funeral sector, crematoria, schools, universities, HR departments, police. We're working very closely with every family liaison officer now on a national basis, and that's incredibly important. So for me, going back to basics, really, we've sort of driven these national initiatives and the campaigns to raise awareness and to bang the drum really for the bereaved, and I've stood on my soapbox and I've shouted as loud as I possibly can. So I think it's really just making sure that the foundations are there. We need to keep those wheels turning. We need to make sure that there is funding in place, and that's another huge sort of aspect of our work, is to try and raise awareness and help other organisations have that funding in place so that resources like this can can really be exactly where they need to be. We've got nurses abseiling down buildings, you know, to pay for the Good Grief card and to pay for little key rings where they have locks of hair. That should not happen. You know, it's wonderful that they have the passion for that, but we need to get government funding, and we need that across the 4 nations as well. We've worked very closely with England. We need Scotland, Ireland and Wales to also come into play as well. You know, we're working very closely now with Northern Ireland who don't have a database, who don't have that sort of extensive support service network out there. So it needs to be everywhere. Yeah. And that's really the vision that I really am striving for, is that everybody knows about it.
The future as well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So looking back at your own grief journey since the loss of Graham, what advice would you give someone now who was going through a recent loss? What could you tell them to help them?
Well, first of all, go on the Good Grief Trust. You know, look at the Good Grief Trust and have a look at the choice of services, of groups, of helplines. But just first of all, to take your time, because it is exhausting, it's draining, and it will change, as I say, on an hourly basis. So give yourself a bit of slack, you know. There are no rules. Please don't feel judged in any way, shape or form if you don't feel as though you're doing it, in inverted commas, in the right way, because you might have people who say after the funeral, well, maybe you should be going back to work, or maybe you should be doing this. You know, there are no shoulds, and there's no right or wrong way to grieve. So first of all, just really take your time and look after yourself if you can. But we know that, you know, when you're grieving, you don't often eat properly, and, you know, we don't really look after ourselves. So if you can, do that. And particularly reach out to other people, and that can be really difficult, is actually asking people for help. But hopefully by raising awareness like we do at the Good Grief Trust, is to try and help friends and family to reach in, you know, so that they know, that person who's grieving, that if they don't answer the phone or they don't reply to a message, it's not for any other reason except that they maybe cannot process it and they need time, and just to get friends and family really to help them. So yeah, it's just sort of, it's trying to just manage yourself on a daily basis through that funeral, because sadly, probably when the funeral finishes, that's often when people leave and go back to their own life, and that can be an incredibly lonely experience. So it's sort of finding out that where the emotions come, they are going to be normal. Yeah. You know, what you're feeling is normal, and that can only really come from awareness and reading, you know, articles and listening to people who've been through grief before. And that often happens when, you know, you can obviously read those articles that we've got on the website and watch the videos, and that often really resonates with people who have been through that particular loss. Yeah,
no, thank you. That's really, really helpful. Because like you say, it can be so overwhelming, these feelings. For any organisations, professionals, other groups or individuals that want to get involved and support the work that you're already doing, how can they do that?
Yes, well, absolutely get in touch, please, through the website. Email us, hello@thegooddgrieftrust.org. If you are a corporate who would love to choose us for Charity of the Year, we'd absolutely love that. You know, we're an incredibly small charity, but we've got a huge reach. So if you are another charity, a support service, please do get in touch. We always want to hear about new support groups and services out in the community to add to our database. This month, February 2025, we're launching a new national grief and bereavement cafe map. So everything again is under the one umbrella. So we know the importance of having a cup of tea or a cup of coffee in the community so that people can connect with someone locally, and that's really important. So you can go to the garden centre together or go for a walk. So if you're running a cafe, please do get in touch with us. But just what it is, it's just trying to connect with us as a charity going forward and support us as much as you possibly can. Fundraising, please, obviously. That's really important. But if you're running an event, let us know and we will share it. We need to get people together because it can be incredibly, incredibly isolating.
No, thank you so much. And before we sort of close and finish the interview, just to say, going back to the start of the interview, you said like when Graham died, you went for that walk and you shouted in the sky. What do you think he'd say now to see his wife doing all the things that you've done and like achieving and helping so many people across the UK? What do you think he'd say to that?
Well, we were never married.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's okay, we're partners.
Yeah.
Not that that mattered really, but I think he'd be blown away, to be honest. I think he really would be blown away. I mean, Graham was an incredibly dedicated, talented, gifted director. He won a BAFTA for his work, and he was very serious about trying to achieve and you know, in someone's life and sort of strive for something that you have a passion for. And I've obviously got a passion for this, because the last thing I want is for anybody to ever go through the feelings that I felt when I lost Graham. If it's not necessary, you know, to know that somebody's there. So I think he'd be very proud. I think he would be a proud GT, as we call him, and that's. I've also got his initials in the Good Grief Trust. So Graham Theakston GT was really important to me to get it in. So our lovely branding agency, not only did they come up with this beautiful, lovely brand that is hopeful and it's helpful. We've got orange, we've got yellow. It's not funereal. We haven't got any purple or grey or black. I wanted the image to be so hopeful and so familiar. And really friendly, really.
Welcoming.
And welcoming, exactly. And that's hopefully what we've achieved with the umbrella. And it doesn't matter what weather hits you, if it's a storm, if it's the sunshine, if it's rain, we're here for you under our umbrella.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for travelling to come and do our talk today. Me personally, it's a huge privilege and honour to be part of the Good Grief Trusts. So thank you for allowing me to be involved, and just a huge well done. It's massive what you're doing. You're changing people's lives. You're changing culture for the better within our country and within the UK, I feel, with that support that you provide. So thank you, and I really look forward to seeing where you go next. So thank you, Linda.
Well, thank you, John.